And Thomas Sowell is the patron saint. Thomas Sowell, when Kemi Badenoch, who doesn't like to speak in terms of race. And whenever we speak in terms of race, you will hear people like, why are we racializing the thing? She declared and described Thomas Sowell as the greatest black, I think she's an intellectual who has ever lived. Yes, the greatest black intellectual who has ever lived. Yeah, this is what Kemi Badenoch said about Thomas Sowell. Yeah. So the next one I'm going to do then is just explore one aspect of Thomas Sowell. Let's do that right about now. All right. And we're going to read from a Thomas Sowell book. Yeah. Let's read from some Thomas Sowell right about now. All right. Hold on there. No, me open the wrong thing. Hold on there. We're going to share a little screen, and we are going to. Oh, why is it not giving me the screen that I want then? Ah, there we go. There we go. There we go. All right. So we're going to read a snippet from Basic Economics. Yeah. Which is one of the Thomas Sowell's most popular books. And it's called Basic Economics, A Common Sense Guide to the Economy by Thomas Sowell. This is the 5th edition. And this book was published in 2015. Yeah. And I'm relatively sure that is not the original published date of the 1st edition. I've got to remember when that actually was, but I'll get that another day. Yeah. But this is a relatively recent book. All right. And this is one of the major books that the Black conservative industrial complex champions. Yeah. Whenever we are challenging the economic realities as they face African people in any part of the world, then we'll tell you, say, you must go read, so you must study economics. And when you ask them, well, what book should I read? 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you Thomas Sowell, Basic Economics. Thomas Sowell, by the way, is another African who is a client of right-wing think tanks. Yeah, his entire career is really, being subsidized by conservative neoliberal think tanks in America. And he's like another one is very popular, discussing geopolitics and social politics as far as African people are concerned. But he is, in fact, trained in economics. I believe that's what his PhD is in. All right. Well, we're going to come back to Thomas Sowell's qualifications not his qualifications, but his standing within academia in a second. But yeah, he described as an economist and a philosopher. All right. But most of his work, though, however, I should say most of his popular work is not actually about economics. A lot of it relates to economics, but it's about social and political commentary. Yes. He writes a lot about history, although he's not a historian. Like much of his history is terrible in that regard. But yeah, so this is the patron saint, yeah, of the Black conservative industrial complex. And I'm gonna just increase the size of this thing a little piece more so we can get into this. And I also want to show you an example of why these people exist. Yeah. So one of the major aspects of the Black conservative industrial complex is the defense, the undying defense of white power. And white power in general, but more specifically, the varying different manifestations, specific manifestation of white power that is known as capitalism in general, and more specifically, free market fundamentalism, liberalism, and or neoliberalism. Okay, and Thomas Sowell is a champion for all of these things. Yeah. Now, in this book, he's making an assessment. Yeah, this is so let me make sure I give you the chapter. Yeah. So under the subheading Economic Systems, which is under the chapter where he's talking about prices, yeah. And I want to get the specific name of the chapter. Chapter 2, the role of prices, yeah, the role of prices. Okay, all right. Now, I will say this: although this book is called Basic Economics, you will not find this book in any university curriculum whereby economics is being studied. Okay, all right. And there's a reason for that, which we're going to come back to. But in spite of the fact that he's heralded as the greatest black intellectual, and there are many, yeah, who in the white conservative power structure who laud Thomas Sowell, it's interesting that although he is a qualified economist, and this book has so much praise, that it doesn't feature in the academic realm as a text for students of economics. Yeah, it's an interesting fact, and that's not. And economics is a discipline on the university level that is dominated by what is called neoclassical economics. That is the school of economics that actually promotes what is called free market fundamentalism and neoliberalism. If you don't understand what those terms mean right about now, don't worry, it's not that important, but just understand the dynamics. Yeah. So even though that's the school that Thomas Sowell represents dominates academia as far as the study of economics, his texts are not, in particular, this particular one, which is the most popular economics book that he's written, does not feature. Yes, he's not regarded within the academic realm in that way, even though he's promoted to the public. Yes, in that kind of way. All right. So let's go forward now and read this book. So I said that one of the things that they do is try to redefine and distort African history, particularly revolutionary African history. All right. And in this section, which is under, again, the subheading of economic systems, he says, when many African colonies achieved national independence in the 1960s, a famous bet was made between the president of Ghana and the president of the neighboring Ivory Coast as to which country would be more prosperous in the years ahead. At that time, Ghana was not only more prosperous than the Ivory Coast, it had more natural resources. So the bet might have seemed reckless on the part of the president of the Ivory Coast. However, he knew that Ghana was committed to a government-run economy and the Ivory Coast to a freer market. Pause. So if you don't know what he's talking about, yeah, this is going to confuse you. First and foremost, the president of Ghana at this time is the Asante Kwame Nkrumah. In fact, Ghana independence is tomorrow. More on that later. The president of Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, at this time is Felix Houphouët-Boigny. Yeah. Now, this story about this bet between them, I don't know exactly where it comes from. I've heard it referenced in certain places. I've seen in one place it was referenced as though it was a debate between that he betted him that a socialist economy would achieve more than a capitalist one, i.e. Nkrumah representing socialism, Boigny representing capitalism. I don't think that narrative is particularly accurate because in 1957 and 1960, Nkrumah wasn't championing socialism in that level of an explicit way that he's going to be making a debate. As far as in my humble estimation, to that extent, not to say he wasn't discussing socialism or promoting it, but to say that he's going to make it a bet, especially with a nation that when he was trying to form, a union of African states, that doesn't seem clear to me. Or likely to me, should I say. Yeah. But what is clear is that within the context of West Africa at that time, these two were the most prominent leaders of two different sensibilities in West Africa. Yes. Houphouët-Boigny was a Francophile of the highest order. Yeah. And so when after independence, France, or during the independence era, France was trying to hold on to its colonies. Houphouët-Boigny was a most willing agent in France holding on to Ivory Coast in that regard. And Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah was known to be far more, on the train of we need to do this self-reliantly and as much as possible, remove ourselves from the control of these colonial powers. Yeah. So that was the dynamic between them. The debate wasn't between government run and free market. Yeah, that was not the debate, right? Between Hufet Wani and the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. Yeah, so this is a misrepresentation, right? Well, we're going to come back to that in a second. Yeah, so he says by 1982, the Ivory Coast had so surpassed Ghana economically that the poorest 20% of its people had a higher real income per capita than most of the people in Ghana. This could not be attributed to any superiority of the country or its people. In fact, in the later years, when the government of the Ivory Coast eventually succumbed to the temptation to control more of their country's economy, while Ghana finally learned from its mistakes and began to loosen government controls on the free market, these two countries' roles reversed, and now Ghana's economy began to grow while that of Ivory Coast declined. Okay, so let's look at this now. Yeah, I'm gonna just click so you saw the number 24 there, and so that's the notes, yeah, that he's gotten this particular information from. So if I click that 24, I'm supposed to go to where he found the evidence for the claims that he's making, and you can see here the evidence is in this book, Agriculture, Liberalization and Economic Growth in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. Yes, and he's used it again up here for the previous one. So the full title includes the dates, 1960 to 1990. All right. So let's look at this. Let's look at this. Yeah. How we're going to go into that book. Oh, by the way, I should also show you that it says page 18. You'll see that it says page 18. Yeah. So we're going to go into that book right here now. All right. And look at what the book actually says. All right. So all on there. Okay, so you can see that now. Right, let's look at what the book actually says. Yeah, the book. So you can see Agriculture, Liberalization and Economic Growth in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, 1960 to 1990. The book is written by Robin W.L. Alpine and James Pickett. And they were writing this book on behalf of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. Yeah, ones of you may have heard of this organization. And so the OECD, yeah, or the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, is a unique forum where the governments of 37 democracies with market-based economies collaborate to develop policy standards to promote sustainable economic growth. Together with its sister agencies, the International Energy Agency and the Nuclear Energy Agency, the OECD helps the United States. So bear in mind that this is a basically United States governed institution. Yes, the United States and its partners reap the benefits and confront the challenges of a global economy by promoting sound economic policies, freer markets, more efficient use of resources, and better innovation through science and technology. Yeah. So again, don't worry if you don't all of us know all the terminology. But when you see things like market-based and freer markets, again, this institution is aligned with what is called neoclassical economics. They promote neoclassical economics, which is the school of thought that Thomas Sowell is actually coming from and advocating, and is the patron saint, the black patron saint of, yeah, in this regard. Okay. I should also say that those among the black conservative industrial complex who promote the neoliberal capitalist economy often make of themselves apologists for Western imperialism. There is something about aligning with free market capitalism that also leads you to align with white power Western imperialism as it operates in today's world. Yeah. So when I say that, what I mean now, I'm talking about British and American and French foreign policy to a significant degree. These people either align with or are apologists for. Yes. All right. So we're going to read a section from this book right about now. Okay. And the page number 18, which is the one that he alluded to. Yeah. And what it says is conclusions. Comparative study of the Ghanaian and Ivorian economies in the last 30 years suggests, at least at first sight, that liberalism pays. Yeah. And that's what this institution would like to prove. Yeah, that liberalism pays. When they say liberalism, what they mean is that you open your economy. Yes. So as far as Africa is concerned, that liberalism means that Africa opens its economy to the rest of the world. And in this instance, the rest of the world really means the West. Yeah. Okay, so that means you open your economy to British and American and French goods, basically. Yeah, goods and services. Between 1960 and say 1980, Cote d'Ivoire was the much more liberal of the two economies. It was also the much more successful. In the 1980s, however, Ghana became substantially more market-driven than before, while the government in Cote d'Ivoire in turn intervened in the economy more than in earlier years in this decade. The much improved economic performance in Ghana was superior to that of Cote d'Ivoire, though it still did not close the gap between the two countries or restore to Ghanaians the standard of living that had prevailed in 1960. So now notice that, yeah? Notice that. The standard of living that had prevailed in 1960, that is 3 years into Kwame Nkrumah's presidency. Okay, Ghana becomes independent in 1957. And in fact, Nkrumah has significant influence in the government from 1951. Yeah, but I think he was prime minister, yeah, before that. But that 1960 date, they've actually tacitly admitted that some improvements were going on in Ghana, yeah, at least up until this point, all right? But they're not going to explicitly state that. On closer examination, however, sorry. Let me pause there for a second. Now, notice they said, yeah, the first sentence, comparative study of the Ghanaian and Ivorian economies in the last 30 years suggests, at least at first sight, that liberalism pays. So the quote that Thomas Sowell was used to substantiate his argument, because it was page 18, was taken from that first paragraph that I've just read. Yeah? Okay. So based upon that first paragraph, he's come to the conclusion, or he's promoting the idea, that Cote d'Ivoire was growing faster than Ghana because of its freer market. It had a more liberal market, whilst government control, what he refers to as government control in Ghana, is what stymied their market, stifled their market. And that's why Cote d'Ivoire outpaced them. And so this first paragraph would seem to substantiate the idea, to quote, at least at first sight. But let's continue. On closer examination, however, hold on there. There's a however. Neither Cote d'Ivoire nor Ghana had clung closely to Adam Smith's prescription. Adam Smith is considered to be the father of economics. He wrote the book, among a couple of others, but the main one is The Wealth of Nations. That's an abbreviated title. And it's considered to be father of the discipline of economics, and also the father of capitalism. Yeah. As or the codification of capitalism as an economic system. All right. Let's see. Okay. On closer examination, however, neither Cote d'Ivoire nor Ghana had clung closely to Adam Smith's prescription for economic growth. So Adam Smith's basically classical liberalism, yeah, lack of less government, interference, let the market do what he wants to do, that type of thing. In countries at low levels of development, this, it may be recalled, was laissez-faire, leave and let alone, in domestic matters, and free trade in dealings with foreigners. And there's some caveats to that, but let's not go into that today. The important responsibilities of the government were external defense, domestic law and order, and production of public goods. Yeah. So notice that even with Adam Smith, there's an idea of production of public goods, and by extrapolation from its importance in Adam Smith's scheme of things, the enforcement of competition. Yeah. Okay. So the government is supposed to defend and deal with domestic law. Now, bearing in mind the fact that most majority black nations on the planet from that time till now do not have a defense force that deals with outside threats for the most part. Okay, usually the defense force, i.e., the army, is protecting the neo-colonial puppets from the people. Them, all right. So let's go. This is the however section now. So basically, what they're saying is, actually, when you look into it, really, neither the Cote d'Ivoire market nor the Ghana market was really free market. Yeah. So by comparison, the Cote d'Ivoire market, they might have let more French goods and services in, but their government and their system wasn't really the real laissez-faire free market thing. That they must say, all right, in this thing. Yeah. Okay. To undertake these critical, important tasks with the limited resources at its disposal, government should, for this and other reasons, and we're going to go on to page 19, steer clear of direct production and trading. Like those of the 18th century, contemporary poor country administrations, administrations have little capacity for production or extensive regulation of the economic activity of others. In this regard, excessive and misdirected intervention has never been absent in the post-independence economies of the two West African countries. Yeah. So when they say excessive and misdirected intervention, that means government. Yeah. So that the government is intervening in the economy. Yes. And they're saying now that in reality, the government of both Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana intervene excessively into the economies. This is what the source that Thomas Sowell himself used to substantiate his argument is saying. Okay? It goes on. World Bank data revealed that agriculture was heavily taxed in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire before the 1970s to the tune of respectively 61% and 52%. Yeah, so Ghana taxed agriculture according to these statistics at the rate 10% above that or 9% above that of Ivory Coast. Okay, of value added. Moreover, now all this is not actually the essential point, but it's important information. Yeah? We'll get to the essential point in the next paragraph. All right, or by the end of this paragraph. Yes. Well, where am I? Moreover, a composite measure of distortion based on exchange rates, agricultural prices, protection, and interest rates in 31 countries found that Ghana was the most distorted of the economies in the study. At a time when Cote d'Ivoire was being acclaimed as a liberal miracle, it was 17th in the pecking order. Yeah, so it was very high on the level of what they call distorted, as in companies that had government interference. Ghana was one, Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast was 17. Okay, but whilst it was 17th on this list, it was being promoted to the world, propagated to the world as an example of a free market liberal miracle in Africa. Yeah, that's what's being said here. Though it grew more rapidly in the 1970s than one would have expected from the equation that regressed income in the 31 countries on the distortion index, this better than projected growth was explained by the technical and financial... listen carefully now. Listen carefully now. This better than projected growth, in other words, the fact that Cote d'Ivoire grew in ways that were better than it was projected to have grown economically, as far as GDP and so on is concerned, was explained by the technical and financial assistance that Cote d'Ivoire received from France. It is also possible that the membership of the franc zone helped keep Ivorian inflation low during this period. Let me read that part again. This better than projected growth was explained by the technical and financial assistance that Côte d'Ivoire received from France. It is also possible that membership of the franc zone helped keep Ivorian inflation low during this period. Access to French technical and high-level manpower assistance gave Côte d'Ivoire an advantage over other, sometimes less distorted economies. So even economies that had less involvement from the government in the economy didn't grow as fast as Côte d'Ivoire did. Yeah? Even generally inefficient systems can operate more or less well in the light of the caliber of factor inputs. Most sub-Saharan African countries move more quickly than Côte d'Ivoire to place their nationals on the commanding heights of the economy. This may have met political objectives and may have provided more important learning through doing experience that would bring long-run advantage to these economies. In the short run, however, to buy rather than train high-level skills may result in more rapid growth. In other words, brothers and sisters, whereas in this instance, Ghana did more in terms of training its citizens to administer, and deal with certain levels of economic and political development, Côte d'Ivoire really outsourced those roles to the French. And so it was really the French that was dominating and controlling the Côte d'Ivoire economy as it does up until this day. And even the free market fundamentalist think tank has to recognize that in the long run, you may yield more benefits from training your own citizenry than outsourcing those tasks to a foreign government and institutions. So we see, and this is one of many examples in this book, whereby the source that is cited doesn't necessarily substantiate the argument that is being made. But 9 times out of 10, the people who read the book now go look upon the source. And there are many instances in this book where that is done. But I've highlighted this not just for the general distortion, because sometimes he's doing this in relation to Soviet Russia or other parts of China or other parts of America or other parts of the world. Yeah. But it's the fact that one of the key dynamics of the Black conservative industrial complex is to distort and to denigrate and to neutralize our recognition and interest in our Black power revolutionary movements that challenge the system. Now, you will notice that there's no argument, in Thomas Sowell's reading that, for example, spoke about the fact that when he's talking about Ghana's economy, there's nothing in this reading that detailed the fact, for example, one, of the fact that that the Côte d'Ivoire economy was being heavily controlled by France because of the fact that France was using Côte d'Ivoire and Houphouët-Boigny in particular. By the way, Houphouët-Boigny was in power up until the 1990s, yes? Supported by France up until the 1990s. So from the 1960s to the 1990s, 30 odd years, this man was in power. Yes, there's no talk of the French involvement. There's also no referencing of the British and American involvement. In other words, the fact that Britain and America had effectively declared economic warfare on Ghana. Why is it not allowing me to share this thing? Anyway, let me just leave it, right? There's no talk of the fact that Ghana was in a position of economic warfare with America in particular and Britain, yes, at that time, yeah. So if an economy is not growing and actual economic warfare has been waged on that economy, like you would factor that into, yes, the extent to which you see it growing or not. Like, why would you not? Yeah. But again, the aim is to distort and hypervalorize Western society and defend the interest of the white power structure in this regard. Brothers and sisters, there's more I could say on this, and I even have I was even going to read from Amos Wilson, but maybe I'll do that later because I realized that I've spoken for quite some time and I want to open up the lines then, yeah? So I'm going to open up the lines now. In fact, what I'll do is I will open up the line. I will send out the link to join the conversation now. And then I'll read the Amos Wilson whilst people are coming through. Yeah. So the link is in the chat. The link is in the chat. Yeah. The link is in the chat right here now. I am discussing the classifications of the Black conservative industrial complex. And I hope ones and ones have understood the reasoning thus far. All right. So that's also the reason why you don't find Thomas Sowell listed in academic settings as an economist, because if they did, would be able to have to read through, got you theme thing, you know what I'm saying, and study a little piece more. Yeah, general social media stuff. Like a couple years ago, there's a documentary about Thomas Sowell that, like, everybody I know, they were whether they deal with like economic subjects or not, like this came up in their recommendations on YouTube. Like everybody may know. Yeah. So there's obviously a lot of strength behind this man and what he's doing. All right. So the link is in the chat, brothers and sisters. Feel free to come through. Amos Wilson says the Black neoconservative establishment is used by the white conservative establishment as cannon fodder in defense of white racism and domination against both Black and white liberals and Black nationalists. Black neoconservatives, conservatism has defined itself in opposition to constant call of assimilationists for, and this is that, so that's on the left now. The Black assimilationist is defining a separate or distinct from the Black conservative or neoconservative. Excuse me. For government intervention and legis in the uplift and of the socially depressed and politically oppressed Black masses. It also opposes the belief that government and industry should make special efforts on behalf of Blacks in reparation for harm done in the past resulting from white racism. Black neoconservatives have been ably assisted in this regard by white neoconservatives, conservatives and cryptographers who, due to their ideological compatibility with the values and goals of the white supremacist establishment. This had led to their receiving favorable exposure in mainstream print and electronic media. Bear in mind that Nana Amos Wilson wrote this before 1995, yeah? So look how relevant it still is. Economic media, to their being appointed to influential offices and professional positions such as heads of the EEOC, the Civil Rights Commission, and to the US Supreme Court under conservative administrations, and to departmental chairs at prestigious universities. These well-paid propagandists themselves, the prime beneficiaries of precisely those maximum social, educational, and professional advances resulting from civil rights legislation, Cruz, that's what he's quoting there, paradoxically oppose the very collectivist civil rights activities which have made their occupational positions possible. In other words, African people fight. Let us say we want Black representation and Black people for their part in a position of prestige in the society for make decisions. These are the people that are the beneficiaries of those exact same things. But they don't want those same benefits to be extended to the rest of the Black community, is the point that Amos Wilson is making. It is ironic that these advocates of quote-unquote self-help among Black Americans are themselves a group of client scholars, i.e. mercenary intellectuals. Yes, Thomas Sowell is a mercenary intellectual attached to the umbilical cords of the financial and institutional bastions of the conservative white American power establishment, like the Heritage, Chafe, Bradley, and Olin Foundation. I believe Thomas is Heritage. Is either Heritage or Manhattan Institute. One of the two. Yeah. Foundations. One of the major functions of these institutions is to fund the work of both Blacks and white critics of Black struggles for civil rights, racial equality, and affirmative action, and of the Afrocentric movement. Consequently, Black neocons essentially serve to rewrite traditional white conservative and racist ideological canards, trying to win for them legitimacy in the African community by making it appear that these warmed over self-serving white supremacist contentions originate from their own independent minds. The central function and role of the black neoconservative is to put a black face on white power, to put a black face on the power of the Bakra, the Mozungu, the Obruni, the Oyibo, brothers and sisters. That them differ. And with that, the link is in the chat. The link is in the chat.